Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss some interesting polling which emphasises the urgency of Labour's overall mission to raise the standard of living for people. Keir Starmer had already made it clear that he will judge the economic performance, which he says he's prioritising, by how people feel it, not by statistics. And the latest polling by More in Common shows that they're absolutely going to have to, or they're in trouble. But first, for daily news and commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So this is an interesting chart, isn't it? People were asked to rate their life satisfaction on a scale of 0 to 10, and then which mainstream party they would back. Now, for those who rate their life satisfaction as 0, Reform UK are way out ahead. Everyone else is sort of bunched together, very low down. On the other hand, those who rate it as 10 support Labour strongly. Now, you can look at this and you can draw a few simple conclusions. The more satisfaction people have in their life, the more likely they are to support Labour. The less satisfaction they have, the more likely they are to support Reform UK. So Labour need to get busy making sure people are not just pretty satisfied with life, but extremely satisfied with life by the next election. Even at a satisfaction level of 5, Reform are ahead, although weirdly lower at 4. Labour sneak ahead there for some reason. But of course, the 0 to 10 assessment is subjective. So it's only general trends we can really pay attention to. In fact, rating your life satisfaction as actually 0, unless you are being tortured and starved every day, seems a little bit petulant. So perhaps no surprise that Reform is so attractive to people who sound like a huge chunk of them are probably sulking rather than actually struggling. But this is also useful information because people will judge how satisfied they are with their lives. When they go to the polls, you can't force people to have some good reason for voting the way they can vote however they like. Labour cannot simply make sure that real term incomes increase, public services are running better, and that people will automatically recognise this and appreciate it. Didn't work in America, did it? You know, there may be people who have really rotten lives, but are stoical enough to rate their satisfaction highly, and others who are actually fine, but selfish enough to think their life is terrible. You know, the life satisfaction metric is entirely subjective, may not correlate even very strongly with actual standard of living, although you'd imagine it correlate to some degree. But perception is everything in politics, which is why Labour need to not only keep improving people's lives, but make sure that people feel their lives are improving. So communication skills again. However, there are other lessons as well. After all, Labour are not just in competition with Reform UK. Take the Green Party, for example. Now, what a weird roller coaster their chart is. For people with drop-dead levels of satisfaction, the Greens are the last party people want back, on average, with maybe a bright point at level 2. But it still shows that they will eat into Labour's vote more at the lower end of satisfaction than the upper end. People who are very satisfied with life don't seem interested in the Greens at all. So if I were Labour and you're looking at this, I'd be asking, OK, so we need to find out who are our key voters that we're fighting over with Reform? Who are the key voters we're fighting over with the Greens? And make sure that they are targeted for messaging on how the improvements are improving their lives. You know, make sure those people feel that their life satisfaction is significantly better in a few years' time. And I also find the comparison of Labour and the Conservatives specifically very interesting. See, both of their lines, they're not as roller coaster as the other parties, are they? And both have a voting share pretty much in proportion to satisfaction. Now, this makes sense for the Conservatives, who are the party of keeping the already well off at the expense of everyone else. But it's more worrying for Labour. Yes, Labour can take some solace from the fact that if you take Reform UK out of the equation, people think Labour are the party to improve their quality of life more than any other at the lower end. But Reform are not just ahead amongst this group, they're madly ahead. They don't join the party with everyone else until like 0.6, really. There's that blip at 0.4. This suggests that Labour need to do a lot better at promoting their own investments to the public and calling out the damage that Reform UK would do. And not just when opportunities arise either. They have to create the opportunities to do it every week. But the final thing to note is that for those with the very highest levels of satisfaction, there's like a nosedive for the Tories and a sharp uptick for Labour. That's interesting. It's as if people who are very delighted with life either think that Labour are just better at competently managing, say, or concerned enough for others that they support a government who thinks about others, not just those at the top. But it's such a sudden change of attitude between the more gentle trend up to that point and the very end at just At night, everything's sort of ticking along at 9. Then suddenly at 10, Tories nosedive, Labour upturn. Might be worth exploring that further. But the face value impression of this chart is probably the most important takeaway. For people who feel their life should be better, which I'm assuming are those who rated themselves below 5, Reform UK, the Greens and the Lib Dems will represent a squeeze on Labour's vote that disappears in people who are broadly satisfied, and particularly amongst those who are very satisfied. The good news is that Labour have shown that they are aware of this. They've made it clear. The bad news is perceptions of improved standard of living is not an easy nut to crack, especially against a background of a rebuilding project that nobody's got any more patience for, because as far as they've been told, we've been rebuilding for years. Further economic turmoil from Trump's direct and indirect evil, and a new kid on the block promising sacks full of easy answers to every problem under the sun. But let me know what you think in the comments below, and for more content you could subscribe to the channel or even join to access streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.